Morning.
Good morning.
I'll start off. I think Nate and I did a little more discussion before this meeting this time around. So I'm going to go kind of budget books, kind of where we're at in the process. Nate's going to be on sort of audit reconciliation, moving forward for updates here. I have a few other updates I was hoping to print out, but with my little accent this morning, just got them in here. One is the school audit extension. I found out yesterday that we got another 30 days until, so I guess, the end of June to submit our school audit, which gives us a little more breathing room as a team to kind of finalize the city side of the 23 reconciliation. That being said, we're moving forward. We signed a couple of non-attest agreements with our auditor to finalize this process, and which I put a deadline on May 29th. Nate can talk more about that on getting the reconciliation, but that gives us more time at the same till the end of June. But for me, it doesn't really change the time frame for finalizing 23 reconciliation, not just for the schools audit, but for the budget side of things, so that we have a 23 actuals in there, not 23 budgeted. So we can switch to getting 24 reconciled as soon as possible. So that's in the school audit extension. I think it's mentioned last time around, the High Street kind of purchases we have to do. I know we've talked about that a few times. We've got some quotes in from our various vendors. We're going to finalize that and probably put that on the June meeting. I think that'll be plenty of time to get that, a little over $300,000 approval on the various things we need to purchase. But we don't need it for the May meeting. I don't think the project will be in by that time. So kind of locking in quotes, getting kind of final pricing, and then I'll come back to this group to approve that. Beautification as well, that should be starting up with our current vendor. We had some good discussion with Public Works. I think, there were some additions that weren't done last year that we contracted, we asked for a bid or quote from our current vendor. Kind of goes outside of my budget authority to approve. So I think we're leaning on, maybe doing that internally through Public Works, through volunteers on those extra pieces and seeing, I think we can do it a little cheaper even for this year, and then, kind of reimagining what next year's piece will be. I know Jana she submitted a grant that could really go through a lot of beautification that we're in the final processes for, where we passed the first round. So we're really starting to think of, as part of the budget and 2025, how do we really, could be hanger boxes on the street lamppost, and not just, flowers and mulching, but, painting those lampposts and making sure all the lights work, and that as well, just to show that we're really kind of on our major current infrastructure beautification assets, that they're looking great.
What's the amount of that grant?
I think it's 100,000.
Wow.
It's a pretty substantial amount.
And pass the first test, that's good.
Yeah, and I think some of it will go to street beautification and historic kind of upgrades. It might be some grants that people can, individual business owners can apply for to upgrade their kind of on Main Street. But there's some other ways it can be used too. So, and Jana's got a whole, and the whole team there is, and we involved the Arbor Commission in some of the original conversations here, as well as Heart of Ellsworth and the Garden Club, and starting to kind of put all of our beautification assets on a big map, and designate, okay, the Garden Club's taking care of this, Public Works is taking care of this, what are our gaps, how do we fill them in, what can we do this year, what can we do next year? So honestly, I would love to spend a lot more of my time on that. I'm a big gardener, so the TAN, which we talked about last week, I think the week before, working on getting that in place. So Jim Safian's got a list of things that we need to get through to get that organized.
So that'll be coming in June.
Yes. And then, let's see what I want to do here first here. Yeah, we'll talk about the budget books a bit. We've, Mike has been, working every single day, working every single department head. I think by the end of today, we'll come back in, a final confirmation of their numbers, post meeting with counselors. They're, all in a centralized place now. And we figured out, Mike's out next week. I'm out next week. Nate is out starting Tuesday of next week. But we've got a great handoff plan in place, the sort of budget books, and all the data for everything. has now been centralized and organized, and it's getting handed off to Nate and Matt and in some ways Jana, so that next week it starts getting formatted and every little piece is in there. We're following the 2019 budget book kind of table of contents to make it organized a lot more like that. There are a couple things that just wanted to show you. I'm trying to make it as simple and clean as possible so that everybody can kind of see where we're at, top lines. That first meeting that we have on the budget will really hopefully to be able to orient the council to the new books, how they're organized, some of the edits that have been made. I think in one way is one of the bigger changes here is, everything's gonna be compiled, tabbed, organized, very similar to 2019, except for the narrative and like a lot of the detailed explanation of some of the other pieces. We're gonna have a separate, like, smaller budget book. So you have your big budget book with all the top lines and all the information, and I'll show you some things here. And then you'll have your other budget book where if you need a lot more information, like why did this line item increase, or why are you asking for that? You can go to the narrative explanation by department and what all their codes mean. So it's basically like a code book plus like the brass tack details, so that your budget book isn't just for every section, this big. It's that first meeting really to orient everybody to the book, where we're at with top lines, start discussing on kind of where we want to go, and then so the next week's meeting can be a little bit more of a, hey, I've heard council, you can come in and if you have specific questions over the week looking at the books. The second meeting in the budget can really be, I've tried to get us down to this, or we'll see, Larry's gonna have the commitment, but with the amount of increase in debt, with the collective bargaining agreements, I don't anticipate that, the same tax rate plus I think Larry's estimated about a 5% increase in total valuation. I'm not quite sure that would get us there to hold that tax rate steady. But we'll see where we're at, we'll see where we wanna go. And then I can kind of work on, a potential cut exercise to come back for the second round on where we'd be. We're hopeful that we'll be able to actually bring up this board in real time to, if you want to make changes, you can say, all right, if we want to cut this line item, how would it affect the tax rate? How much Larry's getting prepped for, but if you cut 100,000 from this budget, it affects the median, tax amount that somebody would pay by this much dollars, just so you can kind of figure out like what you're doing there. The other thing that we'll probably hope to have by that budget cycle is Larry's been working on like the roughly 600 senior citizens that had a tax rate freeze 2 years ago that are about to get, basically double year evaluation increase plus so for them it's substantial, and we've got breakdowns of what it's going to be. We've actually been paying Maine Municipal Association for options on, and there may be some options we can do as a council to like stagger that increase for them. But that would mean less tax revenue in the coffers. It's roughly a $500,000 increase that 600 seniors would be facing, and I think it's like on average about $800 per person is what the difference, or per taxpayer, between what they were paying 2 years ago and what they would be paying today, based on like last year's mill rate. So, and increased valuations. So we're drilling into the numbers there. We'll see what options there are as a council as part of the full budget. But in some ways, I think as well as it's about notification, and letting people know that, there was this policy, it froze tax rates, this is what it is, and, and now that policy is gone, so this would be the effect of it, just to give people ample notice, so.
It was very short-lived, too.
Yeah.
Very short-lived.
It was almost cool.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, and there was no means testing. I know there's reasons for that. So the place where, but that's also when I'm gonna want to give you the details. This many people would see increases based on this valuation, but some people can afford that, and some people can't, unfortunately.
In the same breath, could we talk about how much it decreased for them for a couple of years?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
In the same breath, because, it dove down, and now it's sharply gone up.
That's a good point. Yeah, and Larry can definitely do. Hey, this is the savings you got over these two tax cycles of, and this is what it's going to come back at for this year. So the net.
Yeah, we
might
gotta
be
tell the
less.
whole story,
Right.
not just the bad part of the story. There's a good
great,
part of the
yeah.
story, too.
Yeah, it's tough. That's a tough one because you don't, when you get that tax break, you kind of, all right, great, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
but you're right.
This
that
is the new floor in
Yeah.
people's minds, but actually, if we look back far enough, it was short-lived, so it went down, now it's gone up.
Right.
And I'm not saying we don't try and find a way to lessen the curse on the way up, but reality is that it went down substantially, and now the state has walked.
You're right.
No.
You're right. I'll go just one thing I'll say. This is probably the biggest value add in the quickest amount of time is we've got a new cover page I want to show you that Maura put together, which I'm really excited for the book. So I know we asked, we're like, you know what, we need a new cover page. We forgot to use the last one, and we sent it to Maura within like 15 minutes we sent it to her, you know, she was working from home this week. We sent it to her in the war room, and within 15 minutes it came back, and everybody like erupted. We're like, all right. So that's the easy part. The more difficult part, and this is, we're just gonna pull up the technology budget, but they'll all, you know, everything's kind of coming into here and do an Excel sheet into Cassell. Like these things are going to be matched over so that we can build within the Cassell kind of going forward, so that they're, you know, it's less of a manual process in the future years. So we're going to try and do 2022 actuals. 23 is going to be budget until hopefully June 1st. I'm hoping by that we'll actually be able to get some actuals in there. But right now, that's the kind of finalization of the audit. Budget, obviously, for 2024, the department request manager adjust and the council approved. You know, and then let me just show you, I think we can do a print preview on how it'll kind of look in your books. So we're going to kind of have, this is your detail page. For things, we'll get a breakdown of kind of how you can see it broken out for every single department, so it'll be a little bit easier. And this is where, like, you know, with the narratives on each of the account numbers, this is where like the separate budget book will be, so that it's not just like a giant thing. So if you're like, oh, like that training things are increase here. I think these are all kind of sample numbers right now, but if one of the line items increases and you're wondering for more details, you'll be able to get them there. The other thing, do we have the summary?
Is there a reason that detailed information can't go behind that page there, just so we don't have so many books?
It gets massive, and then you can't search through it. I think it'll be a lot easier to be able to like look at your page as opposed to like looking through the books. And we can, you know, it'll be as functional as like if you want to insert all these things back into the book and have each section. But I think it's going to be a lot cleaner and simpler to. I know it'll be a change.
Can it be a smaller book though? Because if we got two of those
No, yeah,
three-ring binders and.
I know, it's gonna be like.
No, I think it'll be a
Yeah.
smaller book and a bigger book.
Okay. That'd be good.
Yeah, it's one of these things with these sections, and it's just a lot of. I also think it's kind of confusing if you're trying to look through it, and then it kind of goes into these other just layered sections. So,
If you were able to do it your way, and if we don't like it, we could change for next year.
yeah.
That's fine, yeah, we can try it out.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of a
Let's
public.
Let's try your way, and then in next year, you know,
It's
we
kind
can
of
make
like
some
reading your
tweaks.
Bible with the Cliff Notes.
No, and that's the thing. That's when they're orientating the books on that first time. There's a few areas where they've done kind of how we categorize debt, how we categorize capital. I also want to consider this like a process for how we're thinking about it next year. Like, is that we talked about that in previous, is that $10,000 threshold like what we want to consider as a capital request, even though it's leases and like these things, or is that sort of, you know, do we want to consider that really a little more capital assets and how we define those things and going forward? Same thing with this too. I know, and Mike, he mentioned that, you know, Casey or Tammy and Michelle have the way they want their summaries and their this and that, and so this might not be the ideal. I think it's going to be cleaner as like a general budget book that you can, as an individual, not go through 1,500 pages to kind of sort through. That you can get really the top line summaries. Here are the new requests. Here's like a quick memo on what the new requests are and why they want them, and we can work from that budget book is what we cut through. And if you want the full summaries of every little capital, you know, or every little line item plus, you know, the 25 pages on leasing agreements and how they go, like you have a separate, that breaks it down by department, has all that in there.
So we won't have that like 5-inch binder that we normally get.
Yeah, we're, you know, we'll,
Probably have 4 and a 1.
yeah, that's.
Oh, yeah.
4 to 2.
More into it, but to your point, that's kind of the way we talked about it a lot. You know, wish we could have done it earlier in just organization, information design, how we get there. I think next year we can get even more tighter on like, you know, formats for how people, you know, send them in. I know when you guys were looking at them, I think it was Nancy, she really liked the way Reggie kind of had his new requests and everything on like the top before you even got into the main budgets. Let me see if I can pull that up too. But we never told it. Everybody kind of had their own way to go about it. Let's see. Okay, so this will be like your top line for every department. You'll get, you know, those top line areas where everybody's at, you know, what their department positions are, the duties and responsibilities of the departments, and just like here are their new requests. And maybe once, that won't be in the first one, but a manager adjustment summary. So this will be where you're at. And then you go to that next page, which is like the full line item readouts, and it'll be like a small memo on the new requests, new budget
Yeah,
summary.
no, that looks good.
I like that a lot.
And so that'll be kind of your main budget book, and we're looking at line items, and then it's like, hey, all right, I need to know about like, you know, there might be some things like I don't need any of your information. I think we should get rid of that. Like that's just too much. Like we're done. Great. Or this is a keep for sure. We like the information we have. We've heard of it. Or I need more detail. Okay, is there enough detail in here? You know, because a lot of the department heads have responded to your comments. I talked to police about it yesterday on some of the information you asked about their capital request. They're putting more details. They're adjusting their memos. You can look in that department in the big book, or the smaller book, and find like a lot of details on that. So I think
Charlie, are
that'll.
you going to give us a recommendation for?
I don't think on the first one. I think it's going to be like that first budget meeting. I think is going to be an orientation to the books. Like here's you'll have the top line number. Here's if we want to fund everything, what you're going to need to be. And so I can get kind of a direction from you all on like, Charlie, and I know we're a little bit backwards on this. You know, we need to try to get down here. Like, let me work with the department directors. We'll try and get down there, and with you all. Like, you know, come in over the next week as you've got questions on the book. You know, I felt like we need more information here. Of course, we'll get as much in this council meeting as possible for that first one. But as you're reading the book over the next week, you know, let me know. Send me an email. Send Nate an email. Send anybody on the team an email, and we'll start updating it so that second budget meeting will really be sort of the manager adjustment of me trying to get it to where, you know, we need to be.
So my fear with that, though, is when you bring that budget in with no cuts, it's gonna go out to the public like, oh, there's gonna be a 30% increase, and,
Yep. Also the American.
yep,
I mean, I can try the.
25% higher.
yeah.
But they're already doing that.
Yeah, and you're going to see the departmental requests.
They're already stirring about it.
And yeah, the departmental request is staying in there, so you're going to see what from a public level, you will see what that increase is as a total. I can try and get a manager to adjust, but I'm out next week, so I'm only going to have 3 days to do it.
That's fine.
You know, and I
That's
think
fine.
if you say that in the meeting, you know, this is just everything. This is without any cuts. And, you know, for a first budget, because we're kind of late into the process, and just explain it. And
Yeah, and it kind of is what it, like, you know, especially that we got $1 million up on debt. So and if you look, the debt section is going to be a little more robust here, but we were carrying $900,000 last year. We're carrying $1.9 million in service in our debt this year. We
That's
also had.
because of leases.
Leases, bonding.
I think the ban finalized,
Maybe the
we
ban,
rolled that
yeah.
into
Yeah.
permanent financing, and, yeah.
We've got our debt book. Nate and I talked about. We're going to get much. There's that whole debt section. I still need to dig into so I can answer that question of that. The CBAs. I think it's not really until that Monday council meeting when that's all finalized. But it seems like all our CBAs will be finalized. That's going to be, you know, so, and that's, I'm also going to put together a top line memo. We will have that going into this, which I might want to adjust to for that next week. But I'll probably talk about the CBAs, you know, where you're big, you know, the debt, that's kind of where you're big at, and just where the departments are at. And as we talked about before, like, you know, half the budget is closed in the school side. So if we're trying to drive things down, it's going to be on kind of half the street here. So that is going to be difficult to figure that piece out. So, but without the top line number 2, and the full request. I know I'm still a little, where I'm gonna have to go, so.
To speak to that just a little bit, if I may, I would suspect that we would experience a little slower cash coming in the way the economy is in this next year. In other words, I don't know if you want to call it bad debt or short debt, but I don't think the cash is going to flow as quickly in. I think there's going to be more people in the rears. Even though we have budgeted, I think that there's a lot of struggling families.
We should compare, because it's about lien time right now, or lien notice time, to see how many lien notices we're sending out versus how many we did last year. Because they should be keeping track of like how many
Yes.
are going out each year, so.
Sue
I
has
hope
that.
I'm wrong,
She
by
does.
the way. I just fear that
Yeah.
budgets and cash flow coming in, I realize there's tax anticipation notes, but it may come a little drier than
Yeah.
it has.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of, Nate's side that we're working on, and to your point, Michelle, from last, is like cash analysis, up-to-date reconciliation, all those things of really being able to, every single day, every single week, know what we're expecting to come in, what we're expecting to go out, staggering the spend, so it's not just past the budget and, everybody's dialed in, so,
Yeah.
a lot of the more structural ways to handle the budget too. Doesn't end at the end of this budget season, so. So that's kind of directionally where we're going with this. Thank you to Mike and to Nate and to the whole team. They've been working overtime, I think. It's not a traditional way to attack a budget, but
That's excellent.
it's been great actually for me to kind of be up in the war room with this gang and really kind of learn all these details and learn from Tammy and learn from you, Michelle and Steve, and keep coming in. We're trying to be just transparent and open lines of communication and attacking this budget as well as we can this year, so we have a lot of cost stability in the next year. So that is that piece for the budget book update.
Just gonna say, it's exciting to see this. It really truly is.
Yes, I really
It really is. And I love the new thinking of how to present, and it's
Yeah.
great.
Thanks.
Really great, thank you.
Yeah, and a conversation too. Let's keep those critiques coming, even if it's something I don't want to hear. And I know we've had these arguments upstairs a lot. We figured out where the screen should go, by the way. So.
Oh, well then, life is good. It's all functioning
Yeah,
up
yeah.
there.
And I'm sitting here looking at this to the points I've just heard, that, this is a learning curve this year. There's a lot of stuff under the carpet that need to be swept out, and imagine what next year can be. I mean, this is gonna be a learning year all the way around, so.
Yeah, and I'll
we've
tell you,
got-
the thing that I'm struggling with when I look at the budget and listen to the presentations is, I know that, we always had capital budgets, and we bought things, and then we placed them when they needed to be. And all of these leases is making every decision that we're making, like the two from the police department, that's a forever.
You're locking it in.
You locked it in, you locked it in to that payment. So you just automatically set your budget for next year and for the next 3 years, or for whatever, for a minimum, because those leases stand. And that's the only thing that it makes me a little nervous.
And we've circled
Just
up
need
on
something.
let me see if I can get to the home on this, like that project.
Yeah, and if nothing else, it makes you really have to change the way you present your budget, because it's not, it used to be that you never locked in your next council to a budget, but leases, you absolutely do.
Yeah.
Well, there's no walk clause on this, right?
I'm sorry?
Is there a walk clause on the lease?
Well, I don't know, but I think it's more, if the police department gets cameras, then you're never gonna take those cameras away from them.
Right.
So that lease is,
Well,
and so
there-
instead of being able to like stagger the change and the new purchases, so that you can afford it, you
No,
are
I'm trying to
locked
get to
into a
the- oh, here we go,
lease.
here it
So
is.
that's what scares me. We're doing it with vehicles now.
There's some, I've
So-
signed a lot of vehicle leases that have walk clauses. So you have a defined amount to walk at a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Okay, in other words, to turn that around. To the other side of that, though, is that when you're locking the future cost, you are locking the future cost. You're not subjective to a $10,000 increase on the plow that you're buying next year, or what have you. You've got fixed costs for this amount of time, and you know and can budget for that.
Yeah, and you also, to me, that was interesting, is it's called a lease, but there is like value that stays in the lease that the lease company pays you back for. So it's not like when I lease a car, it's almost like a financing, and then you get money. And then there's the cost predictability, which is helpful. Like you do lock it in, but you're also, and the repairs stuff, and you're kind of on, and I know you, Steve, you do this with your company, and so there is but I've got, to your point, Michelle, I've got a lot of questions on how this shakes out. You know, and,
Exactly,
and the
yeah.
fire department has a lease thing in there, and Public Works, and police did it last year, so we've got this on the big board on sort of lease budgeting, and to have, you know, Sean maybe take the lead, talking to Public Works, talking to fire, let's think about this holistically. You know,
Exactly.
he can kind of explain a lot of these details, a lot of the questions even you're having now, and like, that might not be first budget, but maybe that's a big one, a big decision on like, do we punt on this to next year, and really kind of, do we have what information we need to start doing these things now? Or is this also where the biggest cost savings is gonna be, to be like,
Yeah.
not this year? You know, those types of perks, like, that's gonna be where we're gonna get the most, like, you know, decrease in the rate, so, like, let's not even have a 2-hour conversation about these leases, because this is what we're gonna have to, you know, this is kind of first on the list, so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's uncharted waters for the city.
Yeah, it is. That's why,
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
think
I
there's
get
so
it.
much thought that needs
I
to
get
go
it.
into how we do this, and, you know, does it affect our ability to borrow when we have that much in leases?
Yeah.
So
And
I just,
we
Again, it
reorganized the
should go
big
on the
board
operating side.
on fixing finances and the kind of our backlog of stuff we're gonna have to do,
I don't know if we-
stuff we're
I
doing,
don't know if Jake
stuff
will.
that's done. So I could take you through a lot more on, you know, on the things we're doing here. And, you know, but feel free to come up at any time. We're happy to tell you through our most priority projects. So we're also trying to get a prioritization schedule on these things, just so, as I mentioned before, we're doing sprints on different sides of the budget, on the reconciliation, on the Casella accounting. So we're gonna get there. We're gonna plan for it.
really great.
Mark, did you have something you wanted to add?
Oops.
Where
Where's the budget lie right now, numbers wise?
We
So,
don't have that
so
in-
that's gonna be on, this next budget cycle, we're bringing everybody's departmentals in, and we're gonna recreate the books with the top lines on full departmental requests, and then that'll
Hasn't
be,
been done yet.
it's been in progress, yeah. So it's gonna be done in 2 weeks and the following Monday. We've had some top line analysis, but it's been in progress, yeah.
Wasn't there a manager's budget presented to the council back in late February or early March?
No.
How are you running budget meetings without presentations?
Departmental budgets,
Yeah,
just,
the-
just.
Transitional year. Learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is you know, we're-
Mistakes.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've had, you know, the last couple of finance meetings, we've talked about this and where we're at, and, yeah, they've talked about that since the first budget meeting that I saw before I even started here, the budget process has started. You know, it's not ideal, obviously, you wanna have the departmental requests, but it's also, you know, it's been 4 years since they've reconciled the accounts, in City Hall. So it's been 4 years since, and to this date, we don't have reconciled accounts, so. The departmental requests, based on actuals, you know, have not been done in a very long time. So there's a big piece that we have to have the accounts reconciled. We have to know exactly how much is in the account. We need to do it so next year, like, you know, and honestly, even when this budget process starts, you know, as I've said before, it hasn't been done in a very long time, but monthly budget reports, reconciliations, updates on how departments are doing, how the taxes are being reconciled, cash flow analysis, throughout the fall and December. We're finalizing the technology implementation so that, you know, and Ashley's already thinking ahead to next January, where we, you know, starting up in January, we're building in the budget systems, and departmental, requests and analysis start in January. In February, they're pretty much locked, for where we're at. It should be a lot easier because we will be reconciled in ways that haven't happened in 4 or 5 years. Honestly, I think since you left, Tammy, I think there is,
I gotta tell you, here it is, May 10th, and a budget hasn't been somewhat put together yet. Presentations haven't been made. Budget is due by June 30th.
Presentations have been made.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
was happening is we were getting the information at each presentation. So it hasn't been put together so that we can see where we are. We've had the presentations, we've taken our notes, we've done all of that. But now he's working with the new finance office, to try to put the budget now, all the presentations, all the information we receive into a new budget book. So that we can spend 2 or 3 budget meetings just looking at the numbers now.
Michelle, when you were manager, you presented budgets to the council around late February.
Mhm.
And we worked on that budget, either added to it or cut from it, and had all that information.
Yeah,
By May 10th, the school budget was pretty much done. I know that the deadline has changed, the number of days between approval and the voting in June on the school budget.
yeah.
But I gotta tell you, this gives more than a whiff of something fishy going on, whether it's in City Hall, whether it's in finance or what. But to have it this late and essentially starting at square one on numbers.
Well, we're not. So the budgets have been presented. So we have a budget book, right? We have our budgets, we have our presentations, we have all of the numbers that have been requested. They just haven't been put together in a way that we can see it all at once, and what the effect of those numbers are. And that's what Charlie's working on.
So how can you add new positions? For instance, I understand there's a tree warden that you want to add to the,
So that's the presentations. We're gonna be doing that next. That was just requested as a presentation. We just are not adding and subtracting as we go along. We're now going to look, Charlie and the team are putting together some numbers for us. So when we can look at those requests, we can look at all of the requests and then make the decisions on where we want to be and is this the year to do that and how does this affect the future and things, so.
smoke and mirrors.
It isn't smoke and mirrors. It's actually much better than what we did last year, I have to tell you, because we just haven't had numbers. We haven't had we did everything.
Last year, 17% increase?
Yeah. And we were working
It's better
off,
than last
we
year.
were working off comparisons for budgets, Mark. It was not like the budget books that you used to get from Tammy. It just wasn't, and we've got a whole new group. We got a brand-new city manager that's on top of this, and I actually trust what they're bringing us better than what I received last year. And from what I'm understanding, what you received years before.
To
And
further
have an
that,
understanding.
that if I may, don't forget, we've got a 3 to 5 year burning problem.
Yeah.
That we've only seen 3 months or 2 months of repair attempts.
Yeah,
They've
exactly.
come a long way in 2 months to fix a 5-year problem.
Over 3 to 5 years.
He just told you.
I think it's really important in a lot of ways that, and this can be a big issue of kind of blaming the past, and I can be in kind of
Exactly.
where things were at, and what I can say, is kind of where we're at now.
Yep.
And I can say what I've spent the last 2 weeks, and I think this, redesigned a war room on the second floor of this building. I readjusted my schedule, so I'm spending pretty much, probably at least half of my time. I mean, my office is up there now.
Half of your 20 hours a day?
As this council knows, we're doing Agile Scrum, which is sort of a continuous effort on this project, to sort of give real numbers and hyper transparency and communication of kind of where we're at. And again, I don't want to, we are where we are. I can say where the past can inform kind of the present, and I owe this community and this budget process really honest and transparent answers. The accounts, the fact of the matter is the accounts haven't been reconciled in 4 years, at least.
When will this budget's numbers be ready?
So we'll be voting on it at the June meeting.
The
And
Wednesday.
you know what, and if we don't have enough time or an agreement, we can
Do a
do a
I understand when
continuing
you're voting on
resolution.
it. I know that. When
Yeah.
will the numbers be ready?
The 20th
For pub-
of
They
May,
won't be ready the 20th of when?
May.
So,
Will they
Again, we
put
have
on-
the numbers, we just don't have them
Compiled
Compiled.
all together,
together.
big,
It's
one big.
The
book.
numbers we have, we know what people have requested, we know where we are,
Will they be
everything.
put online? Will the whole
Oh, yeah.
budget be
Oh,
put
yeah.
online?
yeah, the budget, there'll be one printed out there for everybody to see. It's,
Online?
yeah, there'll be one online too, yeah.
Okay.
We can put one online, and not, more than that, I mean, my future state for this, I mean, see, that's my other piece, is on kind of steady state for this organization is, we need to build a finance department, and I've told you before, I think a lot of people fall into the trap of, we just need a new director there, or a new this, that will reorganize everything and tell everybody how to do their work better. Like, it is a mobilization of the entire unit to fix it structurally, systemically.
Exactly.
So that, not just online for a budget book, but you could look online in real time, month to month, and say, this is how each department's going. This is where we're at in the top line figure, this is where tax, I mean, I've built, in economic research, for billion-dollar trust fund systems, similar type data visualizations where, again, I can't get that in this budget cycle, but over the fall, over the spring, like the community, this is your information. You need to know exactly where it's going on. And it's not just the budget, though, it's the reconciliation of the accounts, so that you know.
So we know that those numbers are real.
Yeah, and that's,
And they're not just numbers that have.
and it was
been
surprising to
used
me
in finance.
that, that hadn't been done in 4 years, that in some ways that is kind of a baseline going into budgeting, but past is the past, we are laser focused on,
We're gonna have monthly financials to know
Yes.
where we are, we're gonna have cash analysis that we can look at, we're gonna have debt service schedules.
and to your
capital
point, Mark, I
improvement
know,
programs.
like, point taken on kind of the ideal way this should go, and just kind of structurally what has happened, and, it started before I arrived. There was no manager's budget. The departmental budgets essentially were presented to council pre-manager's recommendation or those types of things, and council has stepped in to kind of do the manager sort of, what would typically happen in the manager budget review. So now I'm, midstream. We've got the departmental budgets are all in, what their top line requests are. Those are all now formatted. Similarly, we spent a huge time this week. Next week, they're getting put into their new budget books for printing. On the 22nd of May is when we'll reorient to the top line figures with the new budget books and plus all the departmental requests. We'll come back that next week, which I think is the 15th, for a second round, which is going to be kind of the new area we're at, where I've trimmed to where we can go on one half of the budget. We talked about the school piece. That'll be next week in May. We have another one after that, another budget meeting to see if we need to go further. I left us another week of space before the June council meeting to make sure you're all, where you hope to be. We're hoping to have 2023 reconciled, like last year and the year before, budgets were passed without reconciled figures for any previous years. So they were really, they were really aspirational budgets in a lot of ways, and not based on actuals. So
Absolutely.
that's why Nate's taken the reconciliation piece is, it's really important to have two streams. One is your budget and what people want, but the other piece is that your numbers are actually correct and then tracked moving forward. And we need to spend really a lot of time on both, so.
Yeah,
The,
and again, thank you for
If
this,
I-
and
if I
thank you
could
guys,
just-
I know you're putting
Yeah.
so much work into trying to fix something.
yeah.
If I could,
And, no, that's okay, just the effort is unbelievably appreciated, it really is.
It's a team effort, so.
Yeah.
said in another way, what I'm seeing and what you're showing us is you're laying out the infrastructure, you're putting it in place. Now you just got to plug the numbers in and make some adjustments, and you've rallied the troops and made some infrastructure to work with. There was no infrastructure since I've been here that I have seen like you have done. And you folks have, everyone has pulled on the wagon, and this is exciting.
Yeah, I'm,
It's very exciting. Thank you, guys.
Yes.
yeah, we got a long way to go. The finance director post, it's, as I've told you before, one of my biggest things is personnel and getting the right people here to do the job, and then it's resourced appropriately, so that if Nate, Ashley, and I walk out the door, that there's leadership and institutional support that, the finance continues, the tracking continues, the systems are built. We have this new technology program, which should help a lot, but there's still a lot of human elements. So the finance director posted this week, and we've already got a few applicants, a few good ones, actually. So we're going to hold that open for 21 days before we do a review there. But it's also, as I said before, it's not just the finance director piece. This is a pretty big, large organization that needs like perfect budgeting throughout, from procurement to cash analysis to and there's, and we are laser focused on getting all those together. So
Perfect. I am so sorry, but I just got an email, I gotta go.
No,
All
that's
right.
okay.
It's the story of my life.
I will send
Yeah,
it
and I have to
over.
leave in just a few minutes too, so.
I'll send it over to Nate to talk about reconciliation. and
I'll say,
anything else.
yeah, really,
I'm sorry to miss it, but I'll be.
no, it's okay.
You can read my notes for 5 minutes.
Charlie obviously covered a lot of what we were doing. So obviously I've been working on the reconciliations, working with the auditor and his team on the PUC report as well as reconciliations, the audit. Like Charlie said, we'll just email them every day and, what do you need, what do you need, what do you need? And so we can ensure that audit comes in quickly and that reconciliation. Those reconciliations are up to date. I've been working, obviously, just trying to make sure the numbers in Cassell match what's shown on the bank statements, because like we said, it wasn't done before. So I spent a lot of time this week working on that. Ashley went to training yesterday, and she's been working on her things. The team's, like I said, it's a team effort. It's not one person. Between Mike, wastewater, Nate, IT, I mean, everyone's pulling their weight, and we're trying to get this ship righted with our captain over here, and I think we're heading in the right direction, so.
What'd you go for training for?
I just went to the MMTCTA's annual conference
Oh, okay,
in
cool.
Bangor,
Yep.
so I learned a lot
That's
of.
the main tax collector and treasurers
Yes.
association.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, learned actually a lot of good things, so I'm excited to bring that back.
Big thanks to Ashley, and to Nate, of course, but Ashley especially, this, ton of great ideas, amazing amount of institutional knowledge.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tammy too. This is what I've been, it's like, yeah, we depend on her so much as an organization to make sure we're all, doing the right things here. Very, very appreciative, so. Even on stuff like ARPA we were talking about yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was like Googling stuff, and then I was like, I was just kind of talking about it out loud upstairs, and then Ashley started chiming in, and I was like, wow, I don't even need to Google. I've got like institutional support right here. So.
Awesome.
Cool.
So, yeah.
All right. Do you have anything, Steve?
Anything
I
else?
do not, Mr. Williams?
Mr. Blanchett? Okay. All right.